notice two facts. Number one, it's a resurrection appearance. Jesus is appearing to Mary Magdalene after his brutal death and burial. He's appearing after his resurrection, where he's been raised in his physical body, now made immortal, glorified, all of which you deny as a Muslim. So if you want me to believe this chapter, I can never be a Muslim, because this chapter affirms Jesus was killed for my sins, was raised physically, bodily, never to die again. So thank you for helping me see I can never follow your prophet or your God. That's the first problem. The second problem you have if you're a Muslim asking me this objection or raising this objection. Notice again that the God of Jesus and the God of the disciples is the Father of Jesus, the Father of the disciples. But hold on. Last time I checked, in chapter 5, verse 18 of the Quran, and chapter 9, verse 30 of the Quran, and chapter 19, verses 88 to 93 of the Quran, let me repeat, chapter 5, verse 18, Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 18, Surah Al-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 30, Surah Al-Maryam, chapter 19, verses 88 to 93, Allah is a father to no one. The Jews and Christians are not his spiritual sons and daughters. Jesus is not his unique son. And the highest relationship you can have with Allah is a slave to master relationship. So if you want me to believe John 20:17, you again destroyed the Quran, buried Allah and Muhammad, because the God of Jesus, the God of disciples, is the Father of Jesus, the Father of disciples, which you don't believe. 2 strikes. Now let's answer why Jesus could say that. Why would Jesus say, my Father, your Father, my God, and your God? Well, let's go back to John 1:14. Read that for me, brother, if you don't mind. John 1:14.
All right. John, I mean, everybody should know what John 1:14 reads anyway.
Sure.
John 1:14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
And what else does it say?
And we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth.
Okay, now notice, he became flesh, and he's not the Father. He's the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So Jesus is distinct from the Father. He became flesh. The Father didn't become flesh. And why did he become flesh? Part of the reason was to be the servant of the Father on earth. So now go to Jeremiah 32:27. Jeremiah 32:27.
All right, Jeremiah 32:27. Jeremiah 32, verse 27 reads, Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me?
Okay, now, brethren, pay attention. When I say brother, I mean brothers, sisters. Jehovah is the God of all flesh.
To me, man.
No, that's okay. I mean, you can make a strong case that you are just, you are otherworldly. You transcend flesh and gender because you are heavenly, sir. Anyway, Jeremiah 32:27. Guys, let's see if you get it, because you should already know this because we've answered this 1,000,000 times. Jehovah is the God of all flesh. Jehovah is the God of all flesh. Okay. Jesus became flesh to become the servant of the Father. The Father to become flesh. If Jesus became flesh to serve the Father, why would it shock you that when Jesus becomes flesh, the Father becomes his God? Why would that be shocking? When Jesus becomes flesh to serve his Father, the Father became his God. Why would that shock you? In fact, this is to be expected, right? So that's why Jesus could say, after his resurrection, because now he's in his flesh body, glorified flesh body, immortal flesh body. He's still a man in a flesh body, and the Father is still his God. Why would that shock you? It's to be expected. But now here's the shock for those who think this passage refutes the Trinity and the uniqueness of Christ. Did you notice that when Jesus said to Mary, go to my brethren, he didn't say, go to my brethren, tell them I'm ascending to our Father and our God, because that would be simpler, right? Our Father and God. But he made it more complex. Notice his language. Go to my brethren, tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, my God and your God. Why make it more complex? Why not just simplify and saying our Father, our God? Because Jesus is highlighting the fact, the point. He is my Father in a unique sense, and he is my God in a different sense. See, he is my Father essentially, because I am the Word who springs from the heart of the Father, so I've always been a son. You, on the other hand, are not his sons by nature. You are his sons by creation and adoption. And he is not my God by nature in that I'm not a creature. I am the Son who became flesh, so he becomes my God, whereas he's always been your God by nature, because as creatures, he's your God by your very nature. Let me repeat. Because you are creatures, created and brought into being, he is your God by your very nature as a creature, whereas he is not my God by nature, because my nature is eternal. I am divine, an eternal person. I took on the nature of a creature, so he's my God by virtue of my condescension in becoming flesh to become part of creation, whereas you are a creature by nature, and by your very nature, he is your God. So he is my God in a different sense than he is your God, and he's my Father in a different sense than he is your Father. He is your Father by adoption through faith in me, by creation, whereas I am his essential son, and he's my Father by my very nature. Whereas he's your God by the fact that you are creatures by nature, but he became my God because I chose to become flesh and enter creation. See the difference?
Amen, brother.
Did that make sense? And let me drive this point home. Go to John 1, 12 to 13. John 1, 12 to 13.
All right, John 1, 12.
To 13.
But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God.
Did you catch it? We are children because of Jesus through faith in him. What Jesus has done for us and our trust in him makes us children of God, because Jesus by grace allows you to become what he is, a child of God. Jesus is a son of God by nature. You are a son of God by virtue of him creating you and giving you life and adopting you by the grace of Jesus to share in the sonship of Christ. And God became his God. The Father became his God by his willful condescension to become flesh, whereas the Father is your God by the very fact of you being a creature by nature.